Hello everyone, in this part we're going to start building this project. So first thing you're gonna do is open the Expo documentation to install an Expo router application. You can go to expo.dev/router/installation, and in the sidebar you will see this installation tab. Just go here, and here is the command that we need. Just copy this command. Then I'm gonna open the terminal, and we need to go to the desktop/chat app socket.io. I've already created a folder, so here we're gonna paste this command, and we're gonna name this as front end and hit enter. Now this is going to install a template for Expo router, and this is done. So let's just close this, and let me open this project into VS Code and drag this here. Okay, so here is the project, and let me just zoom in and bring the iOS simulator as well. Okay, so here we have the template for the Expo router. We have tabs, and this is all the template code, but let's just ignore this for now and first run our application using npm run iOS. This is going to start building our project and run on the iOS simulator. Okay, cool. So there we can see the template code. We have two tabs at the bottom, explore and home. We're gonna pretty much remove everything and start from scratch. So first let me just delete everything inside the app folder. Yes. Then it's saying that we need to create a new component that we will do in a second. So we need to remove the components as well. And then in the constants, we don't need these colors, so let's remove them. Let's remove the hooks as well. Okay, so now we have a clean slate to start with. Now first I'm gonna paste some assets that we're gonna use during the development. So let me just drag them here. So these are some images, the background pattern, the default avatar, the group avatar, and the splash image and the welcome image that we're gonna use in this application. Don't worry, you'll find the link for these assets into the video description. I'm gonna remove the git from this folder so that we don't see all the highlighted files. So you can use this command rm-rf.git. So this will remove the git repo from this folder. Now let's create a new folder, utilities, and then I'm gonna create a new file, styling.ts. And here I'm gonna paste some functions that we're gonna use to make our app responsive. So here basically I have a fixed width and the height for a device. Then we are using horizontal scaling and the vertical scaling to scale the design to be responsive. But if you're not gonna use this, then there is another library that pretty much uses the same thing. So if you go into Google and here write React Native Size Matters, this is the library that does the same thing. It also provides you with the scale and vertical scale functions that you can use to make everything responsive. But I did not install this library, and I just write this because these are the functions that we're gonna use, so I don't have to install a library for this. Then I'm gonna define a theme for our project. So let's create a file, theme.ts, and I'm gonna copy and paste the theme configuration here. So here we're using the scale and vertical scale functions from utilities that I just showed you. Then we have some fixed colors for our theme, some spacing horizontally, so we can use these predefined values, spacing vertical, and some radius values. So we can just import these variables and use these values. You can find the link for this file into the video description. So then I'm gonna create a types file which is going to have all the types that we're going to use. So let me just copy and paste all the types here. Don't worry, I'm just going to paste it for now, but I will show you all the types whenever I use any. So you can just copy the code from here, or you can find the link of this file into the video description. Okay, so then let's close this, and now we're gonna create the first component of our first screen of our application, index.tx. Let's create a functional component, and we're going to use this as a splash screen. So let me just run our project. Okay, so there we can see splash screen. Now we're gonna use this as a splash screen. It will show for like 1.5 seconds and then it will go away. So we need to create a welcome page where we need to go. So let's create a welcome.tsx file in the auth group. By the way, if you want to learn about Expo router and its file-based routing, then I have another detailed video on this. So go watch that first if you are new to Expo router. Now let's start designing the splash screen, and here let's make it container, and let's add the styles for the container. Let's add the flex one, justify content as center, then align items as center, and the background color will be different. So we're gonna use a background color from our theme variables. Let's import the colors, and we'll use neutral 900 color. So if we go into the colors, this is the same variable that I showed you earlier. We're going to use this throughout the development. So let's save this. There we can see the color. So now we're gonna use a component called status bar to change the font colors of the status bar. Let's add a property bar style as the light content, and the background color will be a neutral 900 from our colors. Okay, so now I'm gonna use an animated logo for our application. So for that we need to use animated.image component from reanimated. So if you go into package.json, we are using the latest Expo router, which is 53, and then the Expo router 53 includes reanimated library, so we don't have to install it separately. Then here we're gonna include the source for the image. So let's use an image from the assets. That's called the splash image.png. Then we're gonna define an entering property where we define the type of the animation. It should suggest the entering property, and we need to import animated from reanimated, not from React Native. So I think we will need to do it manually, because React Native also have a built-in animated library. We don't want to use that. We need to use React Native reanimated. Now if we type entering, now we have a suggestion. So here we're gonna have the animation type as fade in down. Then we're gonna use a function duration of 700 milliseconds, then a function springify. So this will have a spring-like motion. Then let's define a style, which we will define later, and then the resize mode will be contain. Okay, let's save this. So there we can see the image and it's already animating, but let's define the styles for the logo. Let's add the height as 23%, and the aspect ratio will be 1. Let's save this. So there we can see the logo. Now we need to get rid of these white borders, and for that we're gonna define a stack inside this. So let's create a layout file, and then let's create a functional component. Here we need to import the stack component from Expo router. Let's close this and save this. Okay, so the bottom white border is gone, but now we have this header. So if I just refresh the application, we still have this, but we do have a way to hide this. So if I add screen options inside this tag, I can add a property header shown set to false. There we go. So all the white borders are gone. Now the splash screen is ready. So the next thing is to go to the welcome page after a split second. So here we have a welcome page. Let's go into the index file, and here we need to define a use effect hook. So this will work like a component did mount function if you are familiar with the class components. So we need to define the router from Expo router. Then here after 1.5 seconds, which is 1500 milliseconds, we need to navigate to the welcome page. Here we can see. So let's save this. And after 1.5 seconds it goes to the welcome page. Let's just refresh and see. Okay, so now we have a splash screen and we are navigating to the welcome page. Now we're gonna design the welcome page, but first we have this issue where the content conflicts with this notch area, the dynamic island. So for that we're gonna create a component as the screen wrapper, and let's create a functional component. Basically it's going to wrap all the screens and add a padding top for all the screens so that we don't have this issue. This will have some properties as the style, children. We also going to show a pattern in the background. So show pattern by default is going to be false. Then is model, it's going to be false. We can use this for the models. Then background opacity by default this is going to be 1. Okay, so this will have the prop type as screen wrapper props. So if I click on this, you will see I'm using the following properties for the screen wrapper. So you can just copy these. Then let's add this padding top for this wrapper. So let's create a padding top. And for this one, this will be different for iOS and Android. So we're going to use platform.os to check if the OS is iOS. Then we are going to use the height from the dimensions. So let's get the height from dimensions. We can get this from React Native. Then get function window. So this will get the height of the current window we are in. So we're going to use the padding top as height multiplied by 0.06. But for Android we're going to use fixed 40 pixels. Then let's add the padding bottom. It's going to be 0 for all the screens, but this will change if we are in a model. So we have to define that condition as well. If is model is true, that means it's being used in a model, and the padding top for that will be different. So let's copy this, and the height for iOS will be height multiplied by 0.02, and for Android it will be 45 pixels. Then the padding bottom for the model will be height multiplied by 0.02, like this. So we are also going to use a background pattern for this screen wrapper. So let's use a component image background from React Native. Now we need to define some styles for the image and this component. So style will be flex1. And then the background color will be different based on if it's a model or a screen. So if his model is true, then we're going to use a white background. But if it's a screen, then the color will be neutral 900, like this. Then we also need to define the style for the image in the background. So image style will be opacity, and it's going to be based on the show pattern. If a show pattern is true, then we're going to use the opacity passed from the parent component. But if it's false, then the opacity will be 0, like this. So let's add a source for this image. And we already have this image in the assets as the background pattern.png. So let's save this, and we still haven't used the paddings for the container. So let's do that. Let's create a view. We need to import this from React Native. Okay, so we need to import the view like this, and then let's add a style. This is going to be an array of the styles, and the first object will be the paddings. So padding top, and then the padding bottom, which we defined at the top, then the flex1. And then we will also define the style object, which we are passing from the parent component in case if we need to override any styles. So in this view, we need to render the children components like this. Then I'm also gonna define the status bar component to change the style for the content in the status bar. So light content, and the background color will be transparent like this. So let's save this, and now it's ready to be used in a screen. So let's go to welcome screen, and here import this container. Let's save this. So there we go, the screen is black, but if we use a property show pattern as true, this is going to show the pattern. There we go, we can see the pattern. It looks like the WhatsApp background pattern. So we can change the opacity of this background pattern. So if I define it as 0, we don't see it, but if I define it as 0.5, then we can see the background with less opacity. So now I'm gonna create another component for all the typography in our application. So let's create a typo.tsx. It's going to be used for all the text in our application, and this will have some properties as size of 16. Then the color will be the text color from our theme. So we already have defined this color in the colors variable, so there we can see. So then it will have the font weight property, and it's going to be 400 by default. Then the children component, which is going to be text, then the style and some text properties. By default, this is going to be an empty object. So this will be of type typo props. And if I go into the types, there you can see all the types and their properties. So you can just copy this from here. So let's go back, and here we need to define a variable for all the text style. And the first first property we will have is the font size. So it's going to be of type text style, which we can import from React Native. So we will have some suggestions for all the styles like this. So font size will be the vertical scale into the size that we're passing to this component. So yeah, we can use the vertical scale for making the fonts responsive for our application. So we can use this. Then the color and the font weight that we're passing to this component. So here we need to remove this and use a text component, and the style will be the text style that we just created, and the style we're passing from the parent component in case if we need to override. Then we need to spread all the text properties like this, and inside this we will just render the children component, which is going to be the text that we will use. So let's just remove this. Okay, so this component is ready, and let's try to use this in welcome screen and see what happens. Let's save this. So we don't see this because the default color is black, but if I change the color to colors.white, there we can see the text. Now we can add other properties as the size. Let's add the size of 30. Now it's bigger, and then we can use a property font weight. It's also going to suggest all the values because we use the right type for all these properties. Okay, so it's working now. Let's just remove this, and now I'm gonna copy and paste the entire style sheet for the welcome screen, and I'll just explain these whenever we're gonna use them. So this will save me some time. Let me just import these variables. Okay, so this is the style sheet for the welcome page. Now let's create a view and give this a style of container like this. So you can already see the container styles at the bottom: flex one, justify content, padding, and margin. So you can just copy these properties. Now inside this view, I'm gonna create another view to align everything into the center. So let's give it a style of align items as center. Then inside this, we're gonna use the typo component, and this will have color of white, the size of 43, and then the font weight will be 900, and this will say bubbly as the name of our application. So let's save this. There we can see the name. Okay, so after this I'm gonna display an image, and this will also be an animated image. So let's import animated.image component, And then let's define the entering property as the fade in animation. The duration will be 700, and we're gonna use the same Springify method just like before. And then let's define the source. It's already saved in our assets as the welcome image. So images/welcome.png. Okay, now we're gonna define the style. So style will be styles.welcomeImage. As I hover over the welcome image style, you can see the properties. Okay, so then the resize mode will be contain. Let's close this and save this. There we can see the image. Then we're gonna create another view, and here I'm gonna display a message. So let's use the typo, and this will have a color of white. Yes, this one. So we need to change the text to stay connected and change the size to 33, and the font weight will be 800. Let's save this. There we can see. So we're gonna have 3 lines. So let's copy this 2 more times, and this will say stay connected with your friends and family. And let's change this one. Great. So now I'm gonna display a button after this, and I will need to create a custom button component for this. So this can be used after in our application. So let's create a new component. Name is add button.tsx. Let's create a functional component. Let's save this, and let's just import it here. This one, and let's save this. Okay, so there it should be here, but because it's black, that's why we can't see it. But this will have some properties as the style, the onPress function, the children, and the loading. By default, the loading will be false like this, and this will have the properties from our types file as the button props. Okay, so if I go into the button props, you will see these properties and their types. So you can just copy these. It also extends the touchable opacity. So this will be a touchable opacity. Then here we need to render the children component. This can be text or any icon. We need to import the touchable opacity like this. Then we need to define an onPress function that we pass from the parent component. And then the style for this, we're going to have 2 styles, the default styles and the style object that we pass from the parent component. Now let's define the default button styles. First is going to have a background color from our theme. We'll use the primary color for the button, and then the border radius, we'll use the full radius from the radius variable. And then the border curve will be continuous. The height will be the vertical scale of 56 like this, and then the justify content into center and align items to the center as well. Okay, so let's save this, and there we can see the button already, but we don't see any content because we haven't passed any children component. Now I'm gonna handle a case where if the loading is true, then we need to return the loading state. So for that, we're gonna return a view, and this will have the same styles as the button. This will occupy the same space as the button, but the difference will be the background color will be transparent and it will show the loading. So now we need to show the loading component here, which we haven't created yet. So first we will need to create a loading component as well. For now, let's just leave it like that and create a loading component. Let's create a functional component, and here we need to pass some properties as the size and the color. So size will be by default large, and the color will be default primary color from our theme. And this is the same props as the loading indicator, activity indicator. So we can just import the props from React Native like this. So here we need to add the style so that it takes the full space. Flex 1, justify content center and align items into the center like this. So now we can remove this and use the activity indicator, which works both for the iOS and the Android, and define the size and the color properties. Okay, so the loading component is complete and we can go back and use the loading here. And with this, the button component is complete as well. So let's go back to the welcome screen, and here we need to add the content for this button. So let's use the typo, and this will say get started. Let's save this, and there we can see the content. Now we can show the loading by just adding the loading as true on this button. Let's save this. I think we made a mistake somewhere. Okay, we need to return this view, so we forgot to return this view. Let's add this here and remove the semicolon. Let's save this. So there we can see the loading, and if we remove the loading or make it false, this will go away and show the button like this. Now let's add the size as 23 for this text, and the font weight will be bold. So I want to make this button white, and for that we can override the styles and give it a background color of colors.white. Let's save this, and there we can see the button. Now when we click on this, nothing happens, but we need to move to registration page. So first let's create those pages inside the auth group, the login page, a functional component, and let's rename this. Okay, then a register page, the functional component, and let's rename this and save this. Okay, so now we're gonna move to register page from this button, and for that we need to define a router using use router from Expo router. Then let's define an onPress function on this button, and this will move to the register page, this one. So let's save this, and let me just reload the application. So now when we click on this get started button, we move to registration page, and to fix this we're gonna use a screen wrapper like this. And we still don't see the text, and for that we're gonna use typo and give it a color of colors.white. So there we can see the register text. Now let me just reload, and with this we have completed the welcome screen design, the splash screen. We have made components like the typography and the button. So this is it for this video, and in the next video we will start working on the authentication UI.